Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News. I just got out of the Holiday Inn in Cloverdale, BC, because a town hall was put on by BC United. I asked them questions. You can find some of the previous reports on that on our website called bcleadershipreports.com. But today I'm going to show you a discussion I had with the BC United leader Kevin Falcon about whether or not his party is shaking in its boots about the growing support we're seeing in polls for the Conservative Party of British Columbia. For those of you who have been following our reports, you know that the Conservative Party of BC has gone from having no MLAs in 12 years to all of a sudden having official party status. They are led by Conservative Party of BC leader John Rustad, who was formally kicked out of the BC United. I'll talk to Mr. Falcon about that. And recently, in the last few months, Abbotsford South MLA actually crossed the floor from the BC United to this party. Let's hear what Mr. Falcon had to say. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and BC United leader Kevin Falcon, who is also the MLA for Vancouver-Quilchana. Now, you just had a town hall. You're going from place to place and actually taking questions, a rare thing that happens with politicians these days. And you had some spicy questions today.
Yes, yeah, it's good.
I want to talk about what we're seeing reflected in the polls recently between yourself and your Conservative competitors, the Conservative Party of British Columbia.
Yeah.
There have been examples, even young people, it looks like, are swaying to going to a vote over there. Let's start with when you first started to see that the polls, that they were gaining some traction and support. What was going through your mind, your party's mind? Were you too worried about it?
No, because it's not surprising at all. Because when you look at I call them the horse race polls. Who's in first, who's in second, who's in third, and not surprisingly, there's a lot of voter confusion, especially over our new brand. Because we named ourselves, we moved away from BC Liberal, even though we weren't connected to the federal Liberals. There was often confusion about that. I've been a federal Conservative all my life, a former Reform Party member, and so that confusion was reflected in a lot of our members that were frustrated and said, we just want to be a totally separate party, like the old Social Credit Party used to be in British Columbia. And so that's why we changed our name, and so that people, whether they voted Liberal federally or Conservative, could feel comfortable under this tent. The voter confusion is no surprise to me. But we hadn't even started our ad campaign, so we've now started that, and people are going to see more about why Kevin Falcon wants to be Premier. And that's the difference. I want to be Premier. They'd be happy to just elect somebody, and they've always been there. So I don't have any problem. A lot of the BC Conservatives are my friends. A lot of their supporters will vote for us, especially when they figure out, oh, that's Falcon and the old BC Liberal Coalition. Got it. That's great. We know who they are. I think the BC Conservatives benefit from the fact they have the same name as the federal party. Totally different party, but they have the same name, and that voter confusion helps them in the between elections. But I'll tell you, I've seen this movie before. I saw it in 2013 when John Cummins was their leader. I saw it in that 2013 election when the BC Liberals were 22 points below the NDP in the polls 1 week before the election was called. And we won a majority. I didn't run in that election, but we won a majority. So I don't spend a lot of time worrying about polls. What I care about is getting our message out, doing these kind of town halls where anyone can come. They can love me, hate me, but they all get to ask me questions. They may not like the answers, but they know I've got the guts to stand up here and address whatever the issue is. And I think that's the right way to be as a politician.
Well, I know you're absolutely right. There were a lot of people who couldn't get past the BC Liberal name, especially if they don't involve themselves in politics now. But there is what seems to be, even we're seeing it federally, this push for conservatism in support. And I know some people wonder, where does BC United stand? Is it even a conservative party? Is it a home for conservatives? Sometimes the word conservative light or liberal light gets thrown around. What can you say about what type of party the BC United is?
Well, it's just nonsense because people can look at my record. My record when I was in government, I cut 42% of the red tape in the province. We cut taxes 25% across the board for all British Columbians, balanced the budget in year 3 like we promised to do, and we hosted one of the world's greatest Winter Olympics, and we got the economy back on track. But we didn't get everything right. No government ever does, but I think we have an excellent track record I'm very proud of as a BC Liberal, now BC United. Now, I get John Rustad, who, by the way, was at the table supporting carbon tax for 4 elections. He was at the table supporting SOGI. I wasn't even there at the time. So for him to now suddenly say, oh, well, I decry everything I once supported, I'm sorry, but doesn't really play real well. It's not honest. The reason why he supported the carbon tax, it was a revenue neutral carbon tax, which means it was a tax shift. It wasn't a tax grab. Now, when the NDP turned it into a tax grab by changing the law and saying we're going to take all the revenue into government, okay, well, I'm not supporting that. I would never support that. That's why I'm against it. But I don't foolishly say, oh, I'm scrapping the carbon tax like John Rustad does, because he can't. There's a federal carbon tax. Just like I said here earlier that I can't scrap the federal GST either. Now, people might like to hear politicians make promises they can't, fulfill, but I'm too honest to do that. I'm never going to do that. So I say, people, here's what I can do. And by the way, if Pierre Poilievre becomes Prime Minister and he gets rid of the federal tax, it's gone in BC too, because I'm not going to be the only jurisdiction with a carbon tax in the country, full stop.
Last question. You talked about leader of the Conservative Party of BC, John Rustad,
Yes.
who was formerly a member of the BC United and a minister as well at one point. Let's talk about his exit from your party. That's something that you and I have never talked about. According to Rustad, on his birthday, he got a notice or talked to you, I forget, and said, basically rebuked this tweet that he had reshared from former co-founder of Greenpeace, Patrick Moore, which basically didn't go along with the climate alarmism that we see a lot of. What is your take on what happened with that? And is it okay? Is there any room for your party for people who want to be critics to some of the sort of extreme agendas we're seeing in the green movement?
Absolutely. And I said that to John when I had a call with him. I said, look, John, we've served together before. You know how it works in politics. You can't just, it's like any team. Say you're a team in a company and you say, okay, let's pick a direction. We're going to go in this direction. We're going to work together as a team and let's go. Now, if everyone leaves the room and suddenly is just off saying whatever the heck they think about every subject, that's not going to look much like a team, is it? Certainly not going to build confidence in the public. And what I said to John is, John, I have no idea. If you've changed your entire position that you've espoused for the last 15 years, that's okay. I have no problem with that. You come to caucus and you stand up and say, I don't believe in climate change anymore, and that's a legitimate position. But it's in the caucus room where we have those debates. In every party I've been involved with, whether it's the federal Conservatives or the provincial Liberals or whatever the case, that's where we hash out our debates and our voice gets heard for sure. And so I said to John, but what you can't do is you can't just be out there tweeting out stuff that causes problems for the entire team. So, John, if you're okay with that, like you always have been in the past, great, we'll work together. But I can't have you keep doing that. You would understand why. Well, I don't know if I can adhere to that. I said, well, if you can't adhere to that, John, you can't be part of the team because I can't have you constantly doing this when we're trying to build a winning coalition here. And he said, well, I don't know if I can adhere to that. Well, I said, you're out then.
But a lot of our viewers are concerned about cancel culture.
Yeah.
And it was just a retweet, no comment on it, from somebody who's invested in the green movement. Is that still sort of the standard? If you're going to retweet, that's something that could be perceived as you advocating for something. You're out of the BC United?
It actually wasn't just that retweet. I can tell you, it goes far. When you're leader of a party, there's a whole bunch of issues. So that wasn't his first time, and he'd been talked to before. And so when this tweet happened, and it was just the latest in a series of tweets that he'd done in the past. I said, John, you just can't, you got to be part of a team here. Because we can't have everyone flying off on their own and deciding what they want to do. So can you be part of a team? That's all I'm asking. You can still have your opinion. If it's changed, I'm okay with that too. We'll have good debates in caucus, no problem there at all. But I need to know you can be a team player. And he couldn't commit to that. And so because he couldn't commit to that, he was not part of the caucus anymore.
Well, those of you who want to know more about what Mr. Rustad says has happened can go to the written article for this report, which is linked in the description box below.
And for those who want to find out more about your next town hall or where to find out more about your platform, where should they go?
We will advertise them. I make sure we try to get the word out so that everyone knows that they can come, and I hope they'll get a chance to come out because I do think it's important. Too often politics gets reduced to bumper stickers, and I think it's really important in a room like this where you get people that can ask really tough questions and hear your answers. Even if they disagree with them, they can say, well, at least he answered my question. Didn't like the answer or love the answer, whatever the case may be. But I do think that's very important for political discourse. And that's why I do these. I don't just talk at the crowd, I also let them have an opportunity to speak. Not too many politicians do that, really, if you think about it. I'm going to be one of them.
There you have it. BC United leader Kevin Falcon, Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. If you appreciate that, I will be having my boots on the ground for you like no other time before for the upcoming BC election. Make sure you're staying in the know. Go to our special website called BC Leadership Reports to see what's being discussed on the campaign trail. Sign up for our emails and chip in a few bucks to help cover the expenses to bring you reports like this if you enjoy them. Drea Humphrey for Rebel News.